Welcome to Inform Kenya, the Nairobi Baptist Church Civic Education video series. We are doing the civic education in the run-up to the elections in August 2022. And so as we go into these elections this August, we have chosen to educate our congregation and beyond. And we'll share an interview a number of guests in an effort to help us to better understand what our responsibility to our nation of Kenya is. And our very first guest to Inform Kenya, we are pleased to welcome one who is a member of the NBC congregation, also has been a pastor in this church, and he's a member of the preaching team of Nairobi Baptist Church in general, and currently the General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. Welcome, Reverend Dr. Nelson Makanda.
Thank you very much.
Please tell us a bit about the EAK and how you have been involved in matters politics.
The Evangelical Alliance of Kenya is the ecumenical movement for evangelical churches and organizations. Currently, we have about 900 denominations that are our members and organizations across the country, perhaps close to about 70,000 congregations across Kenya, and a huge population, depending which data you read, give or take over 12 million Kenyans who are communicants in these churches. We have been part of this process because we think that matters leadership and governance and community transformation go together. And if you separate one, then you may have a defective other, so that since we are all concerned to be the light and salt of our society, and so the EAK has taken up a responsibility to just mobilize the church to actively participate within this sphere of politics, which is a critical sphere of influence. If you leave it out, then we all suffer. We all cry. We all lack food. We all have bad roads, or we are hit by debt when prices skyrocket. It's Christian and non-Christians. All of us experience it, and so we have taken up our responsibility, motivated that that it is our mandate as Christians to engage, and so we are engaging. We have a mediation council that we formed about 6-7 months ago to support this electoral process, and basically is to encourage our member churches and our clergy to take up their role and responsibility to pastor candidates who are within their congregations. So that then if a member is a worshipper with you and is running for elections, is your role as a pastor and as a clergy to follow up on them, to pray with them, to encourage them, to follow up on their families, find out how they are doing, and just encourage them that they are doing a good thing for the country to seek to be elected. But then in doing so, you also encourage them to maintain peaceful attitude and campaigns. And peradventure there's something that is happening that is negative, then you have the platform to rebuke and to correct, because you have been accompanying your member. But then on the other side is to encourage your members to look at elections as a Christian civic duty, because church is a citizen. Christians are also citizens, and our dual responsibility as citizens of heaven and here behoves us to be responsible in exercising that responsibility. And so speaking to members like you're doing now, and members on Sundays, so that they know that going to election is not an evil thing, but it's a godly mandate to go and elect leaders. But then as they do that, they need to consider the fact that the Bible speaks of a leader as a servant of God for your good in Romans 13 verse 4. So that whoever that is elected and has taken up office as MCA, as an MP, a woman rep, senator, governor, or president, or whoever takes up a role to lead in government, the Bible calls him a servant of God. That is what the Bible calls you, Pastor Pinto, and myself. So, so they are our colleagues. So if they are our colleagues, if they are so keen to know what is the character and the competence and everything else around Pastor Pinto, who is a servant of God, they must take the same due diligence in seeking to appoint servants of God to lead in government.
Okay.
Yeah.
12 million is a huge, huge number. How do you reach them as EAK? What kind of structures do you have to make sure that all these 12 million will get to hear the same message about their civic responsibility?
What we have done is that we do not have lots of access directly to the 12 million, but we have access to their leaders. We have access to heads of churches and to the pastors. And so we have taken up a responsibility to engage with the heads of churches. One, to train them, to engage them, to sensitize them, so that then this, like a program like what we are having here, is going on in multiple other churches. And so you might realize that CITAM may be doing something similar like this, and Nairobi Chapel is doing something like this. You find out that MBCI is doing something like this. They are going around the country with a prayer caravan. And so those are the initiatives that we have taken up to engage with our members through their leadership, to take up this responsibility, and each one of us can be able to engage within the sphere that we have. The other way we have sought to influence is through the way of influencing preaching and Bible study, through production of material, like a study guide on the role of church in politics, so that then as many members are able to engage and to hear a common message around elections. So those are some of the activities that we are having to ensure that we engage our members, but also we have programs on media. For instance, we have a program every Thursday on Hope Media, 7:30 to 8:30, the leader that speaks to these issues. And we have been doing it from last year, I think from about October last year, and we will carry through this electoral season.
So it's an early morning.
Early morning.
So 7:30 a.m.
8:30
a.m.
Yes, on Hope TV.
TV.
Hope TV.
Okay.
Yes, and you can find recordings on our social media handles. Yes.
Are you targeting across the board?
It's across the board.
So any leader in any field?
Yes, in any field.
Okay.
And anybody can tag on and listen and follow.
I want to take you back to something you mentioned about pastors reaching out to the local politician. And I'm thinking about it from two perspectives. One, is it only the pastor who should do that? And two, supposing you have a pastor who actually does not have anyone in their congregation who is a politician, do they still have a responsibility?
One is that it's not only the pastor who should reach out. I think any leader who is concerned should be able to reach out. But the pastor is important because the pastor has an audience every Sunday. 52 Sundays, minimum contact with an audience. Some pastors multiply that by 3 or 4 times in a year because they have a revival meeting, they have a prayer meeting, they have a Bible study meeting. So you have this audience with you 4 times in a week. I don't think there's anybody else apart from a teacher. In fact, pastors may have more time than a teacher with the audience. And so they have a place of influence that is enviable. And so that's why we are targeting the pastor. The pastor may not have a candidate within their congregation, but they might know a candidate within their sphere, and they might know a pastor colleague who has a candidate. And so they can use that leverage and influence. But within a locality, say this is whatever ward, I don't know whether this is a Kilimani ward where we are. You may not have a candidate here, but there are MCAs running in Kilimani ward. What should pastors within Kilimani ward do to ensure that the elections in Kilimani ward remain peaceful? And so the pastors in Kilimani ward saying, we are coming together to pray for these elections, to educate our members, but even to host the candidates, so that the candidates are engaging within Kilimani to begin to say, this is what we will do, so that then you give members ability to vet with information as they go to vote for the IMCA. And that's what EAK is trying to do. Just a few days ago, about a week ago, we hosted 3 presidential candidates here at the Nairobi Baptist, just to be able to provide an opportunity for them to express themselves away from a public rally, and stop and think about what they are saying, so that then we can make a choice that is informed. And we are asking, you may not have a candidate within your congregation, but you can do this as a group, as a community of God's people within where you are.
Listening to your last statement, how can, for example, the church, the local church, get hold of those interactions that you had and disseminate them to their people, so that they're able to actually hear, this is how the church has engaged with these candidates, and you get to hear, these are the issues that the church is concerned about, and probably that could help in terms of the processing.
I think we will, one of the things that we're going to do is to segment the interviews, because the interviews were segmented in 4 areas. So we will segment so that then the content is a bit smaller size to distribute. And so we are going to be releasing that just to help members engage. But those who are able and they are enabled, they can find the entire interviews online. They are all over, but we will try to facilitate that process by circulating that content.
There's something you've said without saying it.
Yes.
That pastors in Kilimani get together and pray.
Yes.
An unfortunate thing is that, for example, if Nairobi Baptist Church has the current MCA for Kilimani, you know, there's usually the tendency of fearing that your congregant will be drawn, you know, to other pastors. So I think what I'm hearing you saying is pastors need to go beyond their walls. They need to engage with their colleagues and recognize this is a bigger thing. Could you just speak a bit more into that?
I think to speak to this is to make reference to when Jesus has died and Judas has left, and the apostles in Acts chapter 1 sit together. And they say, let's choose one amongst ourselves who was here, who has experience, who has seen the ministry of Jesus, to replace Judas Iscariot. The apostles get together and they pray. And after they prayed, they nominated those 2. Matthias and I think it's Justus or somebody, and they got these 2 nominated, but after that they cast a lot. It was a democratic process. They prayed. I mean, they vetted the candidates and said these 2 candidates are mature enough and they fit this process. But then they prayed about it and they went and cast a lot, and the lot fell. The vote fell on Matthias, who became the next apostle after Judas. I think pastors must approach the same, our elections with the same view, that God is sovereign. In Proverbs, he speaks and says, we cast lots, but the choice belongs to God. So pastors can rise above the fear that your brother or your congregant might fail in an election or whatever, and give this to God. Do what you can do humanly. And one of the things that you do when you come together, you project a stronger voice as the church. You enable the community to have a bigger voice in governance, as opposed to when you remain isolated. And so it's to ask if there's any pastor who might have any fear, to overcome that fear, because eventually God is involved in these processes, and he's sovereign. He will give us the leaders as he wills. Yes.
Okay. It's been reported in media and particularly in some regions of the country, but it seems like generally across the nation, there's great voter apathy, especially amongst the youth. How would you encourage the youth to get involved? But secondly, how would you encourage the local church to reverse that kind of apathy?
Yes, I think it's indicative because recently when there was a voter registration, the people who ought to have registered were the young people. Out of 6 million, I think the IBC only got about 2.5 million. Out of that, only 30% thereabout. So it appears that then the younger people are feeling this process is not worth it. And one of the reasons that this has happened is that those of us who are older have promoted the same brand of politics. I mean, where it is my tribe or who bribes you, but when they get into leadership, nothing changes. And so the youth are asking, really, this is not something that is interesting. It does not matter. Whether I vote here or vote there, the people are the same. They will have a handshake, they will go to business together, play in the same golf club. So the youth are beginning to feel, what is the value in this for me? And perhaps that's where then we have to begin to speak to them, to see that leadership and governance has value for them, that they can be the change they desire to see. They shouldn't wait that change to be brought by another person.
Okay.
And so by participating in this process, they will make a decision that will change the results of the election. And from what IBC has reported is that there are enough candidates. There are thousands of candidates. Surely in thousands of candidates, it's possible, if you put them on a continuum, it's possible to have one that is very least desirable and one that might be a bit more desirable. So let them go and choose from that list. And after they have done that, exercise their responsibility by public participation. Because politicians respond to numbers. If the youth mobilized their numbers, and perhaps letting the church, the youth in church know that their numbers count. And if their numbers count, then they can make the change they desire to see. They shouldn't wait for somebody else to bring that change.
Now, we'll come back to the issue of the quality of the candidate. But for the Christian, there's, I think there's a statement EAK made recently about being non-partisan. And yet at the same time, the Christian who is non-partisan has to vote for someone. How would you advise in the Christian to balance those two realities?
One is because Christians do not have a candidate. The church has no candidate in the elections. That we can say this is the one who stands for our values, as it were, 100% in total. So we haven't presented a candidate. All the candidates that are in these elections are the same. I mean, they are struggling. If they are Christians, they are struggling Christians, and they are motivated to become leaders of their own will and choice. And so we encourage them to do this. And so because of that, then it doesn't augur well if a church, a congregation like this one, a church like this one, give or take 10,000 members, Nairobi Baptists across the congregations. It's not possible to have a one voice out of them to say, let's vote for this particular candidate, because then you are infringing on the rights of your members, freedom of choice that they have. But then number two is you are seeking to indulge your members in something that is neither here nor there, because these candidates, they are all from the same rock. There is none that you can really risk the church and Christians on and say the church is standing behind so and so. They are all seeking their own fame and their money and their friends and their colleagues, and what remains is what they will give to us. So what we have to do is to ensure that they give to us the larger part and they take what remains, not giving to us what remains.
What remains.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting way of putting it. Looking then at the question of the quality of the candidate, and tagging it to what you've just mentioned, what kind of candidate should a Christian voter look for, or what kind of candidate should this young person who feels, you know, this is not worth my time, what kind of candidate should they look for?
Leadership is about providing services and dividing the national cake to the citizens. And so it does appear that a good candidate is a person whose focus is on people. And so as you go to evaluate how do they relate with people, how do they treat people, do they think that people matter? Because if people do not matter in their small circle, then nationally they will not matter, because you become the public who they can't identify. And so looking at his concern for people in terms of the candidate. But then number two is thinking about their respect to rule of law and matters governance. How do they relate with law? Do they promote impunity, or they are people who seek to walk the narrow path of the law and respecting other people in their relationships? They do not infringe on the rights of others and respect the Constitution. They respect court orders. They respect the statutes that they have sworn to protect, so that then this person can be able to promote a culture of rule of law. Otherwise, you get anybody there, they are not used to that, then they become just anybody. And we have seen examples. We have had some here in Nairobi and in other places. Thinking about a person of high integrity. Who is this person when they get in their private moments? Is it possible for us to discern the integrity of this person? Do they represent who they say they are? If you gave them money, how will they treat that money? If you gave them vulnerable people, for instance, resources for the sick, resources for the elderly, or for children, what will they do? Are they good stewards? Can we speak of these people and say these are people who keep their word? So looking at their character is important, but then looking at their competence. Are they competent? I mean, you and I are pastors. Because we are competent to pastor a congregation doesn't qualify us to be competent to lead a nation. So issues of competence is important in public service. And so as we look at the leaders and go to elect, let's not expect that they will give us out of what they do not have. They will give us out of their competences. So assessing them within that parameter. But since we are speaking this from a Christian platform, it's important to consider these people. How do they value God? Is God important to them? Because they will have a responsibility to legislate and to create policies and regulations that guide and govern us. And if people do not value and respect and honor God, you will see it reflected in the laws and in the policies and the regulations that they provide. And then then the church begins to fight and to begin to pray and to begin to do whatever we do to have change happen. But yet we have the responsibility now to assess these candidates, this side, before they get there. And let's do this across board, from the MCA to the presidential candidate.
Actually, I was going to ask you about that,
Yes.
because generally speaking, the greatest tension in the country tends to arise from presidential candidates. Are they really the most important candidate a voter should worry about, or are they the only ones that voters should worry about?
I think people worry about the presidency because of our history, because historically the president has had all power, and they still have a lot of power. Even now, even with the new constitution. So the president is important because their policies, their direction influences all the other levels of leadership. It influences parliament, it influences the governors, and now the MCA county assemblies. So to that extent, then they are important candidates. The presidential candidates are important because their role and their responsibility has national impact and effect. And so from that point of view, then people are concerned about the president. But in terms of where the rubber meets the road, I think it's the MCA. It's the MCA who will think about garbage in your estate. It's the MCA who will think about potholes where you live. Is the one who will think about water. Is the one who will think about agriculture. Is the one who will think about ECD, early childhood education for your child. And so if you are looking for immediate impact and effect of governance, then you must know who is becoming your MCA. If you do, you will see change almost immediately after elections.
Well, that's significant because I think your average voter is clueless who their MCAs are. Coming back to the issue of registration, is that door closed, or is there still opportunity if there's somebody who's listening to you and they feel convicted that I need to register? Is that door still open?
No, the door is already closed. The IBC has closed the door for registration of new voters until the end of these elections. What is happening now is verification of your voter credentials. And so if you registered as a voter, you can visit your sub-county or your constituency to verify that you're a voter in that constituency. Or you can send a text, I think it's to 70,000 SMS.
Yes.
To 70,000, it is your ID number, hash, year of birth. Send that to 70,000, 7000, 740, and you get a response to verify your voting credentials, that you are registered and which polling station you are. It's possible that they might have changed you to another one without your knowledge, or they might have moved your name to the list of dead voters just because you went to pick a death certificate of your mother and you used your ID number. Your ID. So they can move you to that list of the ones who have died. So please verify. So that's what is happening now. No registration until elections are over.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's this young person out there and they feel, okay, I would have wanted to be involved based on what I'm hearing. Is there anything I can do to help? I may not be able to vote, but is there anything I can do to help make somebody's choice in August a better choice?
Encourage their friends not to shy off, but to be confident to go out and vote, but then engage in a manner that promotes peace within where you are, because whether you vote or don't vote, and peace is destroyed because of elections, you are affected. And so promote peace, but then eventually encourage those that are around you, maybe your parents, maybe your friends, to consider proper characters and the characteristics of leadership other than generosity around elections that politicians demonstrate by bribing voters.
So in other words, engage in civic education.
Engage in civic education.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Now, this is probably water under the bridge for 2022, but very few people are involved in the party nominations. And in some areas of this country, once the party nominations are done, the election is done.
Yes.
How would you advise, it's not possible for 2022, but for the future, how do you advise somebody how they can influence the party nominations so that they get a candidate of their choice?
One is to ask good people to join political parties. Christians and non-Christian, please make a decision to be a member of a political party. Because party nominations are done by party members. And so you cannot have a candidate that you desire if you don't participate at that level. And so going forward, party nominations are going to be extremely important in providing you with a candidate that a list of candidates that you can choose from. And so if you only let the street people or whoever, that does not matter, make a choice of who gets onto the IBC list of candidates, then we are stuck with bad leadership. And so it's to encourage going forward that Christians make a choice. The parties may not be perfect, but get in there and make them perfect. And just ensure that we are not indifferent about these things. If that is not the case, then encourage people to run as independent candidates. But then the challenge is that then the independent candidates do not benefit even from taxpayers' money. Parties that have been in parliament are benefiting from taxpayers' money. Your money and my money is being given to political parties to run political parties' affairs. So they are public institutions. So Christians should not shy off and wait to be independent. I think we just need to engage so that we participate in party nominations. For these elections, it's already done. We choose from the best of the apples. Yes.
What would be your parting shot?
I think my parting shot is to say that politics is important and leadership is important. It concerns you and I. It will affect you, how you live today and tomorrow. The prices that you find at the petrol pump, that you find in the shop, that you find when you go to plant your crops, the schools where your children will go to, the hospitals, whether you find medicine in hospitals or not, the roads that you use, the debt that we have to pay as a country, all that is influenced by these elections. And so it is a matter too important for any Christian to be indifferent about, or any citizen as it were. But then number two is that God is not indifferent about leadership. He sets up kings and disposes others. Otherwise, he will not be concerned about setting some up and disposing of others. God is concerned about politics and governance, and whatever concerns God is too important to be ignored by individuals and Christians. I think that's my parting shot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Makanda. And may God continue to give you and your colleagues at EAK every resource that you need to be able to accomplish this. And our prayer is that the church will rally alongside and not just let EAK, do all the work. That as members, that we will engage effectively.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for this time too. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the first of our episodes of Inform Kenya, and we welcome you to join us in our second edition next week, and we will be talking about peace building or peacemaking. And so be blessed and do your duty as a citizen of this country.